Last week, India's largest drone company, Mumbai-based IdeaForge Technology, filed its IPO documents. This comes just 2 months after Pune-based Dronacharya Aerial Innovations made a stellar debut on the BSE SME platform. While most of us have seen drones being used in weddings or heard them delivering parcels or medicines, drones are now being extensively used in defense, mass surveillance, and land surveying. Rather, even as I speak, drones are fighting the Ukraine war and are involved in the rescue operations in the recent earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. In India, from first being used in the Kargil war to making a cameo in a popular Bollywood movie,
इस साल आपका बेटा ग्रेजुएट नहीं होगा. Unrealistic project है, हमने बताया था. He's making some nonsense helicopter.
to a pizza delivery gone wrong leading to a blanket ban on drones, to now being a sunrise industry enjoying government support, drones have faced their fair share of turbulence before having a smooth flight. And now, investors in the Indian stock market are getting to participate in the growth story of India's drone industry. The funding raised by drone startups has been doubling every year since 2020, with a record funding of $39 million in 2022 as per data from Traxon. 2023 seems to be another record-breaking year, as yesterday, Chennai-based drone company Garuda Aerospace alone has raised $22 million in funding. And the players are not just startups, but large business houses such as Reliance and Adani, who have made their forays into the business of drones either organically or through acquiring stakes in other drone startups. But is this enough to make India the global drone hub by 2030 as envisaged by the government? Is defense the main sector where drones find the relevance? What about the concerns around the civil use of drones? Is the investor interest justified? All this and much more in today's episode of The Morning Brief. It is Tuesday, 14th of February. From the Economic Times, I'm your host Kiran Somvanshi. And in today's episode, we are exploring the prospects of the Indian drone industry as investors look at earning some drone dividends on the stock market. One of the reasons I chose to talk about drones in today's episode was my curiosity about knowing what they are capable of doing. And I was amazed to learn that drones, or birds as they are commonly called in the industry, have around 160 use cases across 22 different industries. Right from agriculture to real estate to healthcare to logistics and to e-commerce. Smith Sharp, the president of the Drone Federation of India, takes us through the journey of the Indian drone industry.
India bought its first set of drones, at least that's what the public record says, during the Kargil war. The drones actually became commercialized and came in the hands of the general public in about 2009 or so, when a couple of companies across the world started building what we now call as commercial drones or recreational drones.
But the credit for popularizing drones among the Aam Janta goes to the 2009 hit Bollywood movie Three Idiots. Ankit Mehta, CEO of IdeaForge, takes us down the memory lane.
These were more like fun projects till 2009. It's only the movie that changed or brought drones into the common consciousness, if I may venture out to say so. Because before that, there wasn't enough conversation and people felt drones were the devices that defense used for, operations in remote areas. So the common population did not have enough knowledge about the technology, but I think the movie changed that completely, right? So we started getting a lot of green shoots of, people wanting to build drones post that movie.
But then,
cut to 2014 when people started talking about deliveries and, pizzas and e-commerce parcels being delivered. Someone tried to do something like that in India, a small experiment of, trying to deliver a pizza via drones. It was, of course, just a gimmick. And that led to the entire government coming down and bringing about a blanket ban on use of drones.
The experimental delivery of pizzas using a remote-controlled drone to a customer in a skyscraper in Mumbai did raise security concerns. The concerns were about flying drones, breaching security, and being used to conduct terror attacks.
So right from the blanket ban on use of drones in 2014 to the first set of policy coming out in 2018. A lot of discussions were happening on the policy, but a lot of things were not moving forward. So that's when a few stakeholders came together and decided that, this is what we will have to do. So they formed the Drone Federation of India. 2018, we got the first set of regulations. By the way, that set of regulations, were so restrictive that if you buy a drone, every drone will basically have a lock, and you can't fly the drone till the government does not give you permission for taking off the drone always. So this is similar to saying, you buy a car, and then when you sit in the car and you turn on the key, the car tells you that, error, permission not received. So, I mean, that was the mindset at that time. And 21, interestingly, after a lot of representations, the government did come up with a new policy. Well, we were thinking that the policy will be supporting ease of doing business, but everything that you can think of was licensed. So doing R&D on drones is a different license. Manufacturing the drones is a different license. Each drone model has to be type certified. That's a different license. If you import parts from outside, then there is a license, as well as every import order has to be, approved. So every possible stakeholder in the ecosystem was licensed, and the person who was going to give the license, or the entity that was going to give the license, was in most cases DGCA, which, sort of does not make sense, because this is a dual use, multi-use technology with multiple, components that are sort of available in all industries. Of course, in the aviation ecosystem, this is what is happening, because larger aircrafts are there and they're carrying people, and the risk is far, far, far higher. But when you move from a few manufacturers and a few airplanes in the country to lakhs of drones in the country and thousands of manufacturers in the country, the same logic cannot be applied.
So obviously there was a gap between the regulatory thinking on larger aircraft and drones. How was the issue resolved?
So March 21 was the time when this happened. And that is when the entire industry and academia sort of came together and said, we've had it enough. We made a presentation of what is the economic opportunity, what is the strategic opportunity, what is the global practice, and why the thought process has to move away from the conventional aviation thought process and move towards the automotive thought process. So you have thousands and lakhs and crores of cars, on the Indian streets, and there is still a licensed sort of trust-based way to sort of govern that entire ecosystem. Of course, all of this has to move towards the thinking of ecosystem without losing the touch of airspace safety and airspace management and all that. So there is a hybrid model that is required. All of these representations basically led to the liberalization of the drone ecosystem. Some magic happened for the drone industry in August of 21. So March 21, we had one set of rules. August 21, we had another set of rules, completely 180-degree opposite. The first one was the ease of doing business, and me and you, if you want to start a drone company today, it's very easy. We don't have any red tapeism. The second thing that happened was basically bring about a financial incentive to accelerate the Indian drone ecosystem, which is the production linked incentive scheme. Government, basically came up and said, we are outlaying 120 crores as of now, and we will give incentive to anyone who is doing drone manufacturing or component manufacturing. And the drone incentive scheme is the easiest one to comply, which basically means, what is this compliance? No minimum investment required, no minimum job guarantee required, no minimum plant and machinery infrastructure to be set up. Third thing that happened was, of course, we wanted to give some protectionism or some support for the development of the domestic drone ecosystem, which is why government brought about a blanket ban on import of drones. So completely built units, knockdown kits or semi-knockdown kits, all of it is banned. So anyone who wants to do sales in India has to either manufacture the drone here. Even if it's a foreign company, they have to set up a subsidiary and a manufacturing subsidiary here, not an assembly subsidiary. This basically ensures that the intellectual property and the ownership, the understanding of the technology remains in the country. And the fourth thing was government as the market maker. So right now, Ministry of Defense, especially the Indian Army and the Air Force, a couple of examples in the Navy as well, are procuring drones worth about 2,000 crores in the coming few months of time under emergency procurement. Now, this is because people have understood that, drones is the future. Future warfare is going to be unmanned. So, Make in India procurement.
But what about the civil side or the non-defense side?
When you talk about the non-defense side, so there is Ministry of Panchayati Raj that is running a national scheme where 6.5 lakh villages across the country are being mapped, and rural property cards are being created for each household in each village of the country. Then there is the Ministry of Agriculture that is brought out a capital subsidy on purchase of agriculture drones. Then there is Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. Every new highway that is being made is surveyed and its progress is monitored via drones. And payments in most cases are also being released after reviewing drone-based work progress, as well as all existing highways in most states of the country are being monitored at least once.
And what about healthcare?
So someday maybe a couple of us should go to Meghalaya and Arunachal Pradesh and see the magic that drones are doing in that hilly terrains and forests. I mean, someone from the community healthcare center gives a phone call saying that we require this antivenom or we require this critical medicine. And a drone is launched in about 5 to 6 minutes of time with that package. The drone goes there, lands, or drops the package. By the way, no infrastructure is required at the delivery location. It's just an open land, that can be cleared off very easily. And the drone delivers that medicine on demand. This is drones that are flying at about anywhere between 60 to 80 kilometers per hour. So for you to travel 80 kilometers, it is going to take maximum 1 hour. So all of that is within the golden 1 hour period that typically healthcare requires. Almost all ministries are looking at drone related technology because suddenly you have a very high resolution camera, you have a very high resolution satellite at low cost, easily available. And that data that is coming in, you can generate a lot of insights very easily out of that.
From the journey of the drone industry, let's come to the journey of Ankit Mehta, who along with two of his friends from IIT Bombay, founded IdeaForge Technology. Last Friday, I visited their factory. So it was a modest electronic assembling unit with young ITI graduates working on electronic components, testing them, and fitting them into different consoles. More than me, I'm sure my son would have loved to snoop around to know how drones are assembled, how their flight gets tested before they are packed in smart containers.
I think it started off as something fun, and we were sort of excited engineers who used to get a lot of ideas. And you can guess that from the name itself, IdeaForge, or the company, because the ideas that we used to get as students as well, we would never sit on them. We would always be building onto those ideas, making technologies. And one such idea was to make a hovercraft and float it in the Powai Lake. So when that idea came to us, the mandate at that time, we were trying to get funds from an innovation cell at IIT Bombay, which I used to lead at that time as a student. And we needed to build something innovative. But hovercraft, it turned out, was not as innovative or patentable as we had hoped for it to be. So we wanted to build something more innovative than a hovercraft. So we ended up coming up with this quad rotor configuration that you see in the 4 rotor drones everywhere around you independently. And that sparked our journey in this direction. So this happened way back in the year 2004. So since then, we've been building drones, and it used to be fun in the initial days. And we also leveraged our involvement in the technology to sustain the first few years of our entrepreneurship journey, because we used to do these projects with IIT Bombay that used to help us sustain. And once that phase started building up to us building more autonomous systems, in 2008, 2 events happened. We had one competition that we helped IIT Bombay secure the pole position in alongside MIT US. Wow. And in 2008, when the attacks on the Taj Hotel were happening in Mumbai, is when we felt that instead of those naval helicopters trying to peer into the 3rd, 4th, 5th floor of the Taj Hotel, perhaps our drones could have done a much simpler job of the same without as much risk as it would take a heli to do the same job, right? So that's when we decided that we want to take this passionate, fun technology exploration that we were doing into building a proper drone product. And that's how in 2009, we launched the country's first autonomous drone, and ended up also getting featured in the movie 3 Idiots because of the fun we used to have at IIT Bombay. And the fact that our systems have been used in most of these events around the country, like the Uttarakhand disaster, Nepal earthquake, the floods in South India, or many other terror attacks and those kind of border management and other situations, that gives us the maximum amount of joy of having built the technology.
But as an IIT graduate, didn't a high-paying corporate job lure you?
So I quit my job in 2006. So, I had asked my parents in one of the debates that we were having that, uh, you know, do you need me to earn for the family to sustain? And it wasn't obviously necessary for that. So I just did not investigate that line further.
So that was convenient and comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, it was a privilege. To be honest, it's a lot of privileges coming up together, right? I mean, the fact that we had the privilege to be in families that valued education, privilege to be at IIT Bombay, which supported our ideas without us needing to spend money on them. And it was actually a big factor in us wanting to start. I think, kudos and credit to all three of my founders and teammates that we were not waylaid in that time, and it built a very different muscle for us because we had to sustain off our own earnings. So we had to build something that was worth something to the customer so that they would pay us enough that we can sustain, right? We have helped people operationalize systems and go through conditions that people have not even seen yet. For example, when we started delivering these platforms, the users did not want to use it. The pilots did not want to go in the field and operate the drones because they were probably doing a very different job before this, and they were pulled into doing this which they did not want to do. So people would actually damage the system themselves so that they could bring it to Mumbai for repair and get out of field. So, I mean, you would fix a system in the field and they would damage it again and come back and tell us that, it's all wrong. A lot of pressure because we had brought on that pressure on ourselves because we had forced them to use it. Forced as in encouraged them to use it. And it was inexplicable that you fix something and then the next day it goes wrong. And people used to carry drones in a gunny bag. They would just put it in a gunny bag and carry it, or they would carry it, hanging it via a rope. So that's the kind of mutilation the systems are experiencing in the field. So a lot of that real world understanding of how the user can react. So a lot of those kind of things you end up doing, which are just something you can't pick up by imagination. So therefore, that built a very different muscle, that built a very different mindset in terms of what we wanted to build, how we wanted to approach it, how to price it in that one sense.
And they built it all right. IdeaForge today is the fastest growing and most profitable player in the unmanned aerial vehicle industry with a 50% market share. It earns 90% of its revenues making drones for India's armed forces, police, and homeland security. In fact, on an average, an IdeaForge manufactured drone takes off every 5 minutes for surveillance and mapping. Backed by investors such as Qualcomm and Infosys, IdeaForge earned a profit of 45 crore rupees on revenues of 140 crore rupees for the first 6 months of the current financial year.
I typically say that drones have gone through that classic cycles of de-addiction, right? In the sense that it starts with denial and then it goes on to acceptance and then you adopt them kind of a situation. So now pandemic sort of accelerated adoption in an unprecedented manner, both in terms of mindset and also in terms of actual real world use. What happened was that government announced this scheme called the Swamitva scheme. And the Swamitva scheme was where the government is using drones to map all the 660,000 villages in the country and their Abadi areas where people live actually. To create property cards for house owners there so that they can then come into the economic mainstream, get into the banking system by leveraging that as a collateral if need be. So that is a transformative scheme that was purely envisaged to be executing via drones. So that came in at the same time, like literally at the beginning of pandemic. Exemptions started to come in for both lockdown monitoring and spraying, and we had locust attacks in 2020. So again, to do spraying on locusts, there were exemptions given. So exemptions started to happen in a fairly healthy manner, which triggered the need for the regulations to evolve, because if exemptions can't be the norm, right? So the regulations were then looked upon to be evolved. So India has now green zones, red zones, yellow zones. And green zones, you don't even need permission from anybody to operate as long as you have a certified drone operating there. So very, very different regime and environment now. And that has led to a massive amount of increase in adoption on the civil side of the house. Meanwhile, defense, again, the need has been continuously building. But surprisingly, it had to happen during the pandemic somehow, that we had the Galwan incident. And because of that, the country realized that we did not have eyes on movements over there because of the challenging conditions there, right? And because of lack of intelligence, we were caught by surprise, or we were not able to react in a timely manner, right? So the need for getting eyes on the borders became an urgent requirement, and we've also started the whole emergency procurement system in the defense at that point in time. So the fast track procurement is what unleashed the entire, you can say, drone ecosystem. We ourselves are beneficiaries of quite a few of those contracts by the virtue of having the technology and being the only ones who had the technology to operate at high altitudes. So that's how the ecosystem completely shifted from being a very restrictive, a very, very slow moving ecosystem to a very, very rapidly growing ecosystem today. And the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan and current Ukraine-Russia war, we all know that drones were a massive, massive impact on these wars. In fact, the Armenia-Azerbaijan war was won because of drones by the other side. And on the other hand, Ukraine-Russia, the scales are tilting on either side depending on how drones are being used on literally a weekly basis. So it's a very fascinating domain, and it is now safe to say that it is here to stay. It is here in our consciousness, and everyone's accepted that there is a need for this technology to be a part of our lives. And we are going to see a large growth in this ecosystem going forward as well.
While Adya Forge gears up to make its debut on the street, I spoke to Prateek Srivastava, founder and MD of Dronacharya Aerial Innovations, whose company made a stellar debut on the BSE SME platform in December. For an issue size of 34 crore rupees, the company received investor funding of over 6,000 crore rupees. This huge interest led to the company's stock listing at an 85% premium to its offer price. And it is still trading nearly 3 times its offer price. The stock of Dronacharya, has kind of performed. I'm sure you wouldn't have expected, did you?
To be honest, no. And looking at the markets per se, the first day it was open for 3 days. And the first day when we saw it was, and we were, simultaneously we were open with 2 main board IPOs as well. And when we saw the performance at the end of the third day, we were overwhelmed. We didn't expect it to be this good. And but that's just the beginning of the game. The real game starts now.
So what do you think? Why was this exuberance in the stock market? Why the investors got interested? Was it because of the business of the company in drones? Because there is no other drone company listed? What exactly kind of clicked, so to say?
So I think overall, of course, the industry played a major role into this. It would be totally unfair if me or Dronacharya takes all the credits for that. So certainly it's the industry. A lot goes to that. There are quite a few key stakeholders, right from the Honorable Prime Minister to the DGCA, MOCA, state government, and all these stakeholders in that. And all of them played a big role in uplifting the entire industry. And maybe the first mover advantage was there with us. But overall, if you see, there are a lot of growth opportunities. It's a sunrise industry for sure. Very good initiatives taken by the government per se. Policy-wise, we are pretty liberal for the drones. And when I talk to my overseas friends and colleagues and all, they actually envy the Indian drone policy, which is pretty liberal and very conducive towards startup, which is a very rare thing, especially for a technology like drone, which can be used for either of the purpose.
Can you take us through your business performance?
Company is around 6 years old now. In March, we'll be clocking 6 years.
Right.
Although it was in hibernation for around 3 years, and all thanks to COVID and all that, we could only start in 2021 last quarter. Since then, there has been some growth. Due to COVID, the service market or the project market was not going that high. So we started with training. And as the name also suggests, it's more from imparting knowledge or training or mentorship and all that. So we were one of the first private organizations or companies to get a DGCA license. So we can give drone pilot license on behalf of DGCA. So that was one big total business area. Apart from that, we have been in the industry for 10 years through some other companies. And this is exactly when the industry started. So all in all, the team has more than 500 projects experience and working right from mining to water resource to irrigation to agriculture and whatnot. So services is number 2 for us. And soon we are getting into the manufacturing side as well. So these are the 3 business verticals we have: training, services, and manufacturing.
And which is the most promising right now for you?
Promising and revenue-wise are 2 different things. So revenue-wise, we're generating a lot from the training.
Right.
But the most promising would be manufacturing for sure, having your own product and launch it in India. So just a bit, let's say I'll take you to February 2022, when there was an announcement from Ministry of Commerce and Industry, that there was I'll say more of a restriction of import of drones from overseas. So this move will give a big boost to all the manufacturers in India, not to be dependent on Chinese or any other overseas components or the drones per se. So most promising for sure is going to be products or manufacturing. Second, services, and third, training. Training still is an untapped market, but then there are players mushrooming. So I think manufacturing, and that too, if you have niche product, you're here to stay then.
Your company is expecting 300% growth within 3 years by training 25,000 drone pilots each year. So how do you see that?
So I'll just give you some current figures. So currently we are, as of today, we only have 2,397 registered pilots, whereas the demand as of today is 100,000. So we are already falling short by close to 96-97%.
Oh.
So there's a huge demand as of today. There will be a huge demand in 3 years, 5 years coming as well. We need to understand that drones are not only about flying. What happens before flying and what happens after it lands is equally important. The real game begins when it lands back. So it carries a lot of data, it carries a lot of video or whatever. So there's a lot of processing, a lot of data intelligence or automation possibilities which are there. So you need to manufacture best of the drones at par with the European or Japanese or American standards. So you need best of the technicians, you need best of the engineers for that. So there's a huge demand for that. There's a huge demand not only for the hardware, but also for software, programming, automation, and whatnot. So we have some courses for those as well. So it's not only the drone flying courses that we have all in all around 12 courses. So right from building a drone, maintaining and repairing a drone, something similar to, let's say, what telecom industry is doing.
So with all these tailwinds, does India look on track to become a global drone hub by 2030?
For a country like India, which is more of a volume game, anything which penetrates goes into millions. So currently China is more into the product side, into the manufacturing or mass manufacturing side, which can be replicated in India and which is getting replicated or better. Application-wise, we are already, I would say, in top 3 of the world. Okay. So the number of applications that we have used drones for are more than 30 plus industries, which is pretty rare in, let's say, overseas countries.
Right.
And talent-wise, we are on course. So it's pretty realistic, I would say, and maybe we will be able to achieve it before that as well.
Ankit echoes the same sentiment.
We have actually an unreasonable advantage if you look at it, because India has some of the most extreme terrains in the world. We have the highest battlefield in the world, which experiences some of the lowest temperatures possible. On the other hand, you have a desert in your western side, which gets to some of the hottest temperatures in the world that you can experience. So we can leverage that to build systems that can survive anywhere in the world. Those systems will be far more reliable also because they're tuned to living through harsh environments, right? And that's the beauty of what we can do here. Having said that, Is the ecosystem well equipped, adequately incentivized? Is what we need to think about deeper and deeper. One of the issues that the ecosystem has presently is that for critical subsystems, which are crucial for intelligence, we depend on sometimes our land border connected nations as well. And when you have dependency on people or adversaries, it can be detrimental to the national security interest. So, for critical subsystems, at least we have to decouple. And therefore, we have to have the right policies, the right processes that make sure that we will have to build a local muscle for it. And that is, again, very, very doable. We are doing it for sure. But it is doable by a lot of people, given this nature and the state of the technology we are at.
So there is still scope for improvement.
I can name about 2 or 3 things that we feel could be better. First, of course, is policy stability. I mean, things are falling in place and the entire ecosystem is working as a juggernaut to sort of promote drone technology being made in India. Request to everyone to not touch anything and let the policy, be stable. Sometimes the best thing to do anything is do nothing. So
do not disturb sign is being put up by the drone industry.
Very, very big do not disturb sign. Don't touch, don't disturb. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we need to do is, of course, drones need to start flying higher, start flying longer over larger distances. So there will be an aspect of air traffic management that will come in. It's a niche technology that needs to be continuously developed with government and private sector collaboration. So that needs to be worked upon. And third thing, of course, a very sensitive and touchy topic for a few people. So we see that a lot of rogue drones are flying across our western border and dropping a lot of contraband substances, arms, ammunition, drugs. That threat is constant and it is increasing every day. So nothing that you do in the country on the policy front is going to actually stop that menace. Of course, a lot of work has to happen on intelligence gathering and counter drone technology. So like how you have mobile jammers and all, there are a lot of detection and jamming technologies in the drone space as well.
Speaking of challenges, there is also the concern regarding privacy and data protection under the liberalized drone regulations.
The government is not allowing everyone to fly everywhere is the first step towards the privacy and the security and safety part as well. A drone falling somewhere will be a disaster. So you have to be 100% ready before you launch or before you give a go-ahead to any new technology. So this is where the government is having a big headache. And I mean, for a country like India with such a big area and volume, so it is going to be very, very difficult. The easiest part is not to allow them to fly. Let's say in Australia, you can't fly over people. So, I mean, that's the easiest way of doing it. But then you're cutting down on the application side by 90%. There are restrictions, which is very easy to put, but then to make a way out from all the issues is a difficult thing. But then to make it happen is the bigger challenge, where we are right now.
So the reality of the fact is that it is just a CCTV camera that is flying up in that one sense in the air. So we've opened our geospatial policy, and rightfully so, because we were just living under a rock, right? Because Google Maps was anyways showing you everything, right? So why would you limit your own guys to essentially not have that ability to build something competing? Yes, there is a certain fear of anonymity of attack. However, with counter drone systems, with a lot of technology evolution, that also, in my opinion, will progressively be a game that will be a constant evolution game. Just like, there are counter systems and then there are counter systems and then there'll be counter systems. So that game has to play out, and it will to some extent. But privacy in the context of CCTV, this, that, we have to put all of that in context and understand if we are comfortable with one, we can't be outraged by another just because it is something different. It has to be within that context. So I believe that the laws are adequately there. Of course, any misuse of any law, any misuse of technology or anything to do the wrong set of things should be taken care of under the law. And the way you handle the data, you have to ensure that data is protected, it is not passed on. But thinking of it as a wildly different technology that is doing something new is not essential, in my opinion. If you have freedom to deploy a CCTV on your rooftop and look into your neighbor's house, that it is what it is.
A conducive government policy has been the biggest game changer for the fledgling Indian drone industry. It has helped attract entrepreneurs, funds, and large corporates. This is likely to increase the adoption of drones in the country, bringing down the cost of equipment and training. Today, an average drone for civil functional use still costs around 8 to 10 lakh rupees, making it necessary for innovative models such as drone as a service to come in to address the issue of affordability. In a bid to become a global drone hub by 2030, India today has one of the most liberalized drone rules in the world. But it has to set the right example. On the one hand, leveraging technology for socio-economic impact, but on the other hand, streamlining air traffic control policies, as well as protecting individual privacy, data, and safety. While the industry would prefer the interpretation of drones as licensed automotives rather than miniature aircrafts, it is up to the government to strike a balance between regulatory oversight and, of course, ease of doing business. It is also upon the nascent industry bodies to ensure that best practices are followed by all the players, big and small, to avoid another Pizzagate. For now, the stock market will have its eyes on the IdeaForge IPO and the valuations that the company commands. At a time when all unicorn IPOs have largely disappointed the investors, profit-making IdeaForge from a fast-growing sunrise sector like drones holds immense potential to make it big on the street and literally the sky. But for people like you and me, it will be some time before drones actually deliver our gifts to our Valentine. For now, we can look forward to the use of drones in meeting our emergency healthcare needs like bringing us our life-saving drugs or organ transplants. All in all, drones as a sunrise industry is an area to watch out for, be it as an end user or citizen or investor. So that's it for today. This is your host Kiran Somanshi from The Economic Times. You have been listening to Drone Dividends only on The Morning Brief. A big thank you to our guests Ankit Mehta, Pratik Srivastav and Smit Shah for sharing their amazing insights. And thank you for tuning in to this podcast brought to you by the team Economic Times. Show producer Vinay Joshi, sound editor Indranil Bhattacharjee, executive producers Anupriya Bahadur, Anirban Chaudhary and Arijit Burman. We hope you like this episode. Do share it on your social media networks. The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday and Friday. The Morning Brief is now streaming on Amazon Prime Music and JioSaavn, apart from Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts. And of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. Do tune in to ET Play, our latest platform for all audio content. Have a happy Valentine's Day and a great week ahead. All clips used in this episode belong to the respective owners. Credits mentioned in the description.